Welcome back to the Fantasy Trading Room, hosted by Fantasy Talk Sports Network. And today we're going to be diving into Week 7, running back and wide receiver rankings. I'm coming at you on Thursday night. We just saw the Jaguars take down the Saints on Thursday Night Football in a 31-24 victory. So we'll be quickly recapping that and what it means for fantasy football, and looking ahead to Sunday to give you guys that you should sit and start and what expectations you should be having for these rankings in your starting lineup, where each position and player is going to finish. So right now, let's dive into the wide receivers. We have 6 teams on bye, which the wide receiver position is a lot better than the running backs, but still, it's not great near the bottom end of the barrel. But at the top, we still have Tier 1, Mr. Tyreek Hill, going up against the Eagles in the highest scoring game of the week. Now, this could easily be a Super Bowl matchup, and it looks like the Eagles are favored, which honestly slightly helps the Dolphins because they're not going to be able to get up big, run the ball like they have been in a lot of games this year with Raheem Mostert. But still, you want these guys that are in high-scoring games. A lot of points scored means a lot of fantasy points scored, and especially with Tyreek Hill. We know he's just an absolute demon either way. So he's in Tier 1. And number 2, we have Cooper Kupp joining that tier. I had Tyreek in a tier of his own by himself for a little bit, but now Cooper Kupp is officially back, scored 29 points in Week 2. He looks like the same old Cooper Kupp. I'm a little worried that Puka's going to come in and bounce back, as I still have him ranked as a top 10 option. But still, Kupp has that elite level ceiling, elite level floor where he deserves to be up in that Tier 1 tier. Now, Judge Jefferson's out, so we can't go Tyreek Jefferson. But right now, it looks like it's going to be Hill Kupp instead of Hill Jefferson. But let's drop down to Tier 2. We have Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So we got Stephon Diggs going up against the Patriots. Now, I know the Patriots have actually played the wide receiver fantasy relevant players pretty well this year, but they have been dealing with quite a few injuries. I know primarily Christian Gonzalez has been banged up this year, and just they've really had a ton of issues in the secondary more recently. But still, it's a tough matchup for Diggs nonetheless. The Patriots love to slow the pace of play down, as they haven't really been doing much, but kind of just getting in gross scoring games. But it's Stephon Diggs. We're starting him either way. He's been great this year. Then A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is a player I'm a little concerned about on a week-to-week basis because of Devonta Smith, and we can see how easily they will go back and forth. Easily, Devonta Smith could have 20 points this game. A.J. Brown could have, 5 or 10, just like we've seen from Smith, and then Brown taking a backseat at times this year. But it's against the Dolphins, so again, this is going to be a high-scoring game. I got to put A.J. Brown in there, trust the true wide receiver on this offense, and trust the talent. Then we got Keenan Allen against the Kansas City Chiefs. This game isn't as high-scoring as it's honestly should be, in my opinion, according to the sports books. But again, what do I know? I know nothing about sports betting, apparently, according to Vegas and them. So I'm going to be trusting what they say for the most part. But Keenan Allen is still the clear wide receiver 1's offense. Josh Palmer's not great. Quentin Johnson has no role, essentially. And they are going to be trailing against the Chiefs. So this is probably the perfect matchup for these pass catchers on the Chargers. Then Amon-Ra is back. Jameson Williams is not going to hurt him. I don't know if you need to be told this over and over again, but Amon-Ra is actually going to benefit from Jameson Williams going out there and stretching the field. I really thought Sam Laporta honestly might, kind of take away something from Amon-Ra because they're both in the middle of the field. But it seems like Amon-Ra is very close to the line of scrimmage. Sam Laporta is running towards more of the middle of the field. We have Amon-Ra, then we have Sam Laporta, then we have Jameson Williams all the way down the field. So they've done a good job spacing things out, and Sam Laporta isn't the target hog that Amon-Ra is either way. He's just very efficient in a good tight end scheme in this offense. Then we'll drop down to Tier 3 where we have Jalen Waddle going up against the Eagles. Now, he had a good bounce back week, and I'm normally not as excited to start him this high, but he is going in a high-scoring game, like we mentioned before. I want to throw all the wide receivers we can in this game. Going to be a high-scoring game, a lot of passing volume. Really love that from Jalen Waddle. I think he's going to get back on pace to, dominate and continue what he was doing last season in fantasy football. We got Devontae Adams. he has verbally spoken out about his targets in this offense, and we know that the Raiders can't win without him. It looks like Brian Hoyer is going to be starting this week, which is a small dip to Adams. We obviously much rather have Jimmy Garoppolo, but Hoyer is a more safe play than Aiden O'Connell right now, even though I like Aiden O'Connell. Doesn't look like he's ready to produce in year one. Going up against the Chicago Bears, I think the Bears should stand no chance as a Bears fan. Their secondary is just awful. So, again, not coming at you with bias with this Bears stuff. I know their worth. I know that Devontae Adams is probably going to torch them, especially after going out. We saw what A.J. Brown did and how they fed him the game after. He complained about targets. These guys do have leverage to some extent. They're probably going to get fed in the very next game. Then we got Puka Nacua going up against the Steelers. Again, he had a down week last week, but he's very talented. I think it's a solid matchup. Really like Nacua here. Then Ayuk going up against the Minnesota Vikings. Well, for one, the Vikings have a horrible defense, not a very good secondary, and they give up a ton of points getting into shootouts almost every single game. But secondly, we have Ayuk with probably Christian McCaffrey down, probably Debo down as well. So when we have guys in this offense, in the 49ers offense that are injured, we should be starting the guys that are healthy because there are so many mouths to feed, but this is such a good offense. However, when you don't have as many mouths to feed, and it's still a good offense because of how good of a coach Kyle Shanahan is and how much other talent is on the field, you really want to be starting Ayuk. So I'm aggressively starting him as a top 10 wide receiver. Then Chris Olave against the Jaguars. I believe he finished the game with, around 10 points? I'll go back and look to that to be exact. But, I mean, not a great game. Just Derek Carr did not look good at all, which really sucks. Olave's, I mean, we can look back and see how efficient Olave has been with his routes, getting open and all that stuff. But, yeah, Olave finished the game with 12.7 points. Not a dud, but Derek Carr has just been selling him so many times this year. I know he was a little banged up near the end of the game, so maybe he is not 100% yet. But I really need Derek Carr to step it up to help out Chris Olave. Then we got Devonta Smith against the Dolphins. Again, same reason with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, of course. Throwing these pieces in, especially with the wide receiver 2 in his offense. We want games with high volume and high scoring because then these guys that aren't necessarily target hogs are going to have a chance to get volume nonetheless, even though they're not that primary alpha number 1 guy. Dropping in tier 4, we have DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, and Marquise Brown. These guys are all about the same for me. I mean, Metcalf's going up against the Cardinals, just a bad defense. You know, Geno Smith has been pretty good near the end of this season. I mean, at the beginning of the year, he was not good at all, but in these past few games, he's really stepped it up. Looks a lot better. Pittman has Minshew now, so although Anthony Richardson helped elevate this overall offense, Minshew obviously should pass the ball a lot more. So we'll see if that actually really hurts or helps Pittman. I think it can help him. And honestly, the Browns may not even start Deshaun Watson, so it might be a close, bad game anywhere where Minshew's going to force feed the ball to Pittman. Then we got Mike Evans. He's been much better than expected this year, even though he is on the older side of things. He's going up against Atlanta. Not a great game script, but he's been very talented this year. Shown out at times. A lot better than Chris Godwin just because Godwin hasn't been able to capitalize on these targets and opportunities. Evans has. He has a touchdown upside. Really like Evans the rest of the season, though it's not a great matchup against the Falcons. Then we got Marquise Brown against the Seahawks. Now, Marquise Brown's a player I really liked in the offseason, and he's showing why. Kyler Murray hopefully should be back soon, but even so, Josh Dobbs hasn't looked as bad as other people are going to make him out to be. He's been pretty solid. Marquise Brown has proven that he can win off of efficiency or volume, and most games when he's getting, 7 to 10 targets, he's capitalizing on that and providing a ton of fancy value there. So for tier 5, we have DJ Moore. Now, Tyson Baggett, I'm not even sure how to say his name. As a Bears fan, he is massively overrated. I'm not sure why people are hyping him up after, a few good preseason games. He's a UDFA. We saw, for example, DTR show off for the Browns in the preseason. He looked abysmal in his first game. Tyson Baguette, I watched the game and he had a strip sack fumble. Like in that limited time he played, he looked awful. So I don't know why we're even still holding out hope. However, Fields looks also awful almost every single game. So it knocks him down slightly, but DJ Moore is talented. He's top 5 in wide receiver yards, which just shows how good he really is. So if he can win off efficiency and volume, we got Baguette feeding him the ball, and he's efficient with those touches. Obviously, he can have a big week, but you don't love the situation. Then Jordan Addison, the hype has kind of died down after he's had really a pop-off game, but he's going against the 49ers. The Vikings should be trailing. They throw the ball a ton. Bad defense, good offense, what you love to see. Christian Watson is hopefully back at 100% against the Broncos, who have given up the most points in the league on a per-game basis. Got to be starting him and hoping that Love has a better week than last week and is able to find Watson deep down the field on those deep balls. Then we got Amari Cooper. It could be a gross situation if Deshaun Watson doesn't play. So I'm kind of ranking him near the middle. He's talented enough to where he can produce on his own, but obviously I like him a lot more rest of the season than this week. We'll just say that. I think Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk. Now, Christian Kirk had a great week. Calvin Ridley has been disappointing once again. So with Ridley, we had him going out and scoring 1.5 points. I know it's a non-factor, but he just isn't getting involved. Kirk is looking really good, and Zay Jones was seeming to take over that wide receiver 2 spot, but Christian Kirk said, nope, give me that right back, and has looked great ever since Zay Jones has went down. So hopefully that should continue for Kirk. Then we got Jacoby Myers, Zay Flowers. Jacoby Myers is my most active wide receiver and an underdog, but I still have to rank him a little lower in this week because, again, they have Brian Hoyer, and Jimmy Garoppolo is the one that seems to favor Jacoby Myers even more than Devonta Adams at times this year. Then Zay Flowers, upside. It's getting kind of gross near the bottom end, but Flowers has crushed the expectation in his rookie year. It's not a great high passing volume Ravens offense. I'm not really sure why that narrative was brought in so high. But nonetheless, Zay Flowers, very talented, solid matchup against Detroit. But that said, let's go over these running back rankings. And this is quite possibly the worst rankings that I've seen in quite some time. We have so many injuries. And let me preface this by saying I dropped these rankings yesterday and the wide receiver rankings 2 days ago. So if you want to see those early, go head over to Faceoff Sports Network. Check out Steve Bradshaw Fantasy if you want to look at my author page. That's where all those rankings will be posted before the YouTube videos even. But Christian McCaffrey, we are operating under the assumption he's out. They are 5-1. The Vikings are 2-4. And they have more than enough time to get him back. I don't see a reason why they push him with this injury history. And I'm also operating the assumption that Jordan Mason starts the game as the lead back. He's been much more efficient than Mitchell, and Mitchell has been dealing with some injuries. Even Shanahan didn't know if he's 100% in some press conferences. However, we will be monitoring that closer to the game. But right now in Tier 1, we have Austin Ekeler as our RB1. Great game script against the Chiefs. Now, normally we don't like running backs in games where their offense is trailing, but Ekeler dominates from a pass-catching perspective. If he's able to get, these short routes and even get down the field, he can absolutely eat. And there's really no other options besides putting Christian McCaffrey at 1 anyway. So now we have to pivot over, go with Austin Ekeler. Then we got Bijan Robinson. He has been pretty solid, but this offense has been so bad. And they haven't been able to run the ball recently, which kind of sucks. But still, Robinson's getting over 100 scrimmage yards per game. He's easily the RB2. And I'm also putting Travis Etienne here at 3, which, a lot of people were saying, like, oh, why is Etienne so high in this tier? We know he's good, but he's not Ekeler and Bijan level. It's time to start respecting him. He had 22 points on Thursday night. It was a great game from him. So, I think that was a pretty good hit. I probably should have had Kirk higher, but Etienne, pretty good hit in my opinion, moving him all the way up to 3 in the Tier 1 section. Then we got Raheem Mostert. solely because of how big of a game this is going to be. Now, again, we would like him to be able to run the ball almost every touch in the second half. That said, it's going to be such a high scoring game. The Mostert should be able to get the ball as a pass catcher, as a runner. Close game. I don't necessarily expect the Dolphins to need to throw the ball every play, so it's not like Mostert's going to be getting wiped out from his rushing efficiency. But still, high scoring game. We're starting these backs for touchdown upside and more touchdown upside. Then we'll drop down to tier 2. We have Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, Barkley, Kamara, and Pacheco. Now, Walker and Jacobs have been great so far. Jacobs had a rough start to the year, but he's really came back. DeAndre Swift is surprisingly getting quite a few targets from Jalen Hurts. Historically, these rushing quarterbacks don't check the ball down, but I believe he had 8 targets last week. I'm shifting over and ranking Swift very highly going forward. And again, he is in this high-scoring game against the Dolphins. Saquon Barkley, it's really tough because he's been banged up. The Giants look awful, but the talent is there, and there's not many other guys with the workload and the talent. I feel like we have to put him there. Now, Alvin Kamara has just dominated so far. And that's because he hasn't even looked particularly that good from an efficiency perspective. I mean, so he had 30 points on Thursday Night Football, which we just finished watching. He had 3.6 yards per carry, but he had 12 receptions for 91 yards. It seemed like every time I look over at the TV, it's Alvin Kamara sitting down 5 yards in the middle of the field and Derek Carr looking off one guy, throwing to his check down. Looking off one guy, throwing his check down. Carr looks awful. He is not able to make reads right now to any extent, but that helps Alvin Kamara a ton. So as long as this keeps continuing, I'm going to have Kamara ranked even higher than this next week until he proves me wrong and Carr actually shows that he can be a competent quarterback without checking the ball down 15 times a game. And Pacheco against the Chargers, I really like this matchup for Pacheco. He has been getting more involved as a pass catcher. He had 6 catches and 6 targets last week. So Jerick McKinnon is kind of taking a obsolete role in this offense now. And with Pacheco getting this passing work, it's really increasing his floor and ceiling. Again, he's a primary power back. So the Chiefs are supposed to be up on the Chargers, which would really help out Pacheco because they're going to be able to run the ball a lot when they get up early. And that is what Pacheco's, main source of getting fancy points is, even if he has been improving as a pass catcher. Now for tier 4, we have Ramondre Stevenson, who looked awful at the beginning of the year, but we can almost chalk that up to some injuries and a horrible schedule. And the Patriots offense has looked bad this year. But he had a big week last week. He's playing against the Bills, so they should be playing from behind. Hopefully Mac Jones checks the ball down. I mean, it really just comes down to there's not really many other better options. James Cook has been on a straight decline, but the offense is good, and I guess he has upside because he's a good pass catcher. Brian Robinson going up against the Giants, he's not a pass catcher, so again, his upside is limited once again. But I think the Commanders can get up against this abysmal Giants offense. Then we got Aaron Jones against the Broncos. I'm not really sure how to feel about Aaron Jones. Right now, he's limited. I'm not sure exactly what that means. But I think that means that we have to start him, assuming that he gets around, 50 to 60% of the snaps, which in that case, he can still be efficient and hopefully he is healthy enough to produce. But we can't rank him any higher than this because he's not going to have that elite level workload like even Ramondre, James Cook, and Brian Robinson may have. And these are guys that aren't even bell cows in their own offense and are still getting significantly more work than Aaron Jones if he actually is limited. Then we got Alexander Mattison. Cam Akers has been basically a no factor. And even though the 49ers are going to be up, I mean, there's really just not much else we can do. Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. I'm going to rank Jonathan Taylor ahead of Zach Moss one more time because they were basically at a 50-50 split. Moss did have more fantasy points, but I think with how Taylor's been progressing, now is realistically the week for Taylor to make that jump over Moss. I know Moss has been great, but you don't pay Taylor all that money in a dead running back landscape to have him sit behind Zach Moss. Rachaad White has been awful this year, but he's still getting every touch in his backfield, which makes him a must-start back every single week in this gross running back landscape. And against the Falcons, it's going to be a bad game anyway. Low-scoring contest where I think Rachaad White should be able to run the ball. And Jordan Mason at 19, again, we haven't seen what he can do in a large sample, so I can't rank him much higher than this. But I would absolutely be starting him this week. He's looked very efficient, and the 49ers are obviously a fantastic running back scheme. They can put almost anyone out there and allow them to be effective. So we're starting Jordan Mason as a low-end RB2, but he hasn't had more than 10 carries, so I'm not really sure how much we can expect from him this week. And we don't know what Elijah Mitchell is going to bring to this offense in week 7. Then we got Jerome Ford against the Colts. I think he's clearly the better talent than Kareem Hunt. Hunt got bailed out by that touchdown last week. Again, it's very gross, but he's shown he can produce, so we got to throw him here as RB2. So far last year, we have Zach Evans against the Steelers. This Sean McVay offense has really favored running backs, and Kyren Williams isn't a phenomenal talent, so I'm hoping Zach Evans can step in there and do almost the things that Kyren Williams did. He's a pretty good prospect, but we'll go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. I'm not really sure what his availability is going to be. He could easily be limited. He's questionable right now. But even so, I really don't. Even if David Montgomery misses, they are not using him. They don't want to get him involved until later on in the year at best. Roschon Johnson has a concussion. I mean, I'm literally running out of guys that it even makes sense to start. But it's probable he's going to play because they signed him out last week, and it looked like that was for caution. So hopefully she'll be back. The Bears' backfield is completely banged up, and Roschon was a phenomenal prospect at Texas. I really like him. Hopefully he plays, and we get Baghdad checking down to him. Jalen Warren, and then Najee Harris at 24, and Najee would be 25. Warren is the more explosive runner, so we're going to be targeting Warren. It's about a 50-50 split, and at this point, I just miss so bad on Najee Harris, as well as some of these other guys in the community were saying that Najee's going to be the bell cow. Has not turned out to be that way. And the Steelers' offense has been so much worse than we could have ever imagined. I don't even know how they look even worse than last year. But after talking about these running back landscapes, we really got to clean things up, hopefully, going forward. We should be having less buys, less injuries. But with that said, we're going to help you with your fantasy lineups every single week anyway. Be sure to come back every Friday for these rankings, and every Tuesday for the waiver wire pickups that you need. But again, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my content, be sure to subscribe to the Face Off YouTube channel. That's where I'm posting my content. Also post written content on the website. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.